What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daniel Talks Football right here on YouTube. I'm Daniel and we are back with another podcast. In this podcast, we are here to speak about Chelsea. We're back with another PL Pod episode. It's been 3 weeks since the last one. Sorry for the extra weeks wait. I wanted to get another big guest on and we have done that. I will quickly promote the podcast we have coming out in 2 weeks. We have a very, very big guest that's coming on. Make sure to go and check out the Daniel Talks Football Instagram. I'll probably announce it on there a couple of days before the podcast actually comes live on the channel. So please do go over there and drop that a follow so you can see who the big guest is that's coming on. He's a fellow YouTuber. He's got over 100,000 subscribers. So go over onto the Instagram to see who that is before the full podcast comes out. We will move back to this week though, and as I've said, we are going to be doing a Chelsea deep dive. As we all know, Chelsea Football Club are a club that have been splitting opinion in recent weeks. A lot of fans aren't happy with the fact they've spent 600 million since Todd Bowley's come in. We're going to discuss that in the podcast and why they haven't really spent 600 million. We're also going to discuss all the players he spent the 600 million on, from the highs to the lows. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. But we'll be doing all of that into the podcast and more. Before we do cut into that, I do need to introduce the guest. Now, the guest that we have on the podcast this week has over 37,000 followers on Instagram. A very, very reliable source for Chelsea men's and women's news, and it's Chelsea Blogs. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing good, man. Much better than Chelsea's season so far, and much better than the Premier League refereeing, that's for sure.
Yes, I wondered if that might come up. I'm sure you're not happy.
It's a Chelsea deep dive. We got to talk about the campaign.
It is a Chelsea deep dive. If we're going that deep into Chelsea deep dive, we may have to discuss the 35 million spent on Danny Drinkwater. If we come out at the other end of that, I'm not quite sure. But no, yes, it will be a very, very good podcast. Before we do get into the nitty gritty of it, how's Chelsea's season been going so far?
It's a roller coaster that just seems to just keep going down, down, and down. Mm-hmm. But hopefully it ends with the big high of us winning the Champions League. That's what we're resting our unrealistic hopes on. But yeah, no, we'll see. There's slight improvement in the last game, but overall the season's been pretty bad, as bad as you can think of. Yeah. Especially when you spend that kind of money.
Yeah, I mean, spending 600 million, you would expect to, have some really big, to be doing well. And that's not the case. So we will actually get straight into it with the transfers so far, because as I say, it's been tough. This will be out on the channel as a tier list, this thing coming up, so go and check out the video as well. And we'll get straight into the tier list with Raheem Sterling. Where does he fall on the tier list? We have 5 tiers: A star, A, B, C and D. How do you think Sterling's done so far at Chelsea?
He hasn't been great. He started off really well under Thomas Tuchel, who kind of wanted to build the whole attack around him. But obviously with the manager change, he's kind of struggled to find his best position under Graham Potter, or rather Graham Potter's kind of struggled to find how best to use Raheem Sterling. But he is still 27. We got him for, I think, a little under 50 million on a 5-year deal, amortized to 10 million a year. He is our highest earner, so that is kind of a big negative for him. But I think his leadership is going to be very important when you consider all the other attacking signings we've made and their age profile. So I'm going to give this one a B and hope that he finds a little more of his goal scoring form, because that's why we signed him. Yeah,
I think with a lot of the attackers, is it a case that they don't have a main number 9 to work off? Hence why they're possibly playing poorer?
Yeah, you could say that for sure. I mean, under Tuchel, our best football was played when we didn't play with the number 9, when we kind of operated with Kai Havertz as the false 9 and Timo Werner, Mason Mount around him, or Pulisic. But I guess with under Potter, even at Brighton, he didn't really operate with a big number 9. I mean, he had Mope for a long time, Danny Welbeck and stuff. So I'm not sure how dependent his attacking system is on a striker. But you could definitely see with the profile of player we have that having a target man, especially someone like Oli Giroud,
Hmm.
who Eden Hazard has spoken so highly of. I think having someone like that would obviously benefit the attack, but I don't know if it would benefit the team overall in terms of how we press and stuff like that as well. Until you don't have a striker like that, you can't really know for sure. And I don't think signing a striker is probably the last thing Chelsea fans want to do right now,
Yeah.
given the money we're kind of spending and given the history of all the
Hmm.
strikers we've signed. So it's hard to answer that question, but you could see it happening. You could see both ways again.
Hmm. Fair enough. Fair enough. And then we'll move from Sterling to Kalidou Koulibaly, the man that was supposed to destroy Aguero and Vardy. However, it doesn't seem to have turned out that way.
No, not at all. He's really struggled to adapt to the Premier League.
Hmm.
He's not been bad in the Champions League though, in Europe, and I think that's why we've seen Benoit Badiashile not be included in the Champions
Yeah.
League squad because I guess Koulibaly and his experience will come in handy in the Champions League, and it's not as fast paced as the Premier League and not as intense. He has struggled with that, and not everyone is Thiago Silva who can just boss the league,
No.
even at 38 years old.
Mm.
Um, so I would put him in the D list just
Okay.
because I know that uh, adapting to a new league at that age, he's 31, adapting to a new league at that age is going to be hard when your body is just becoming slower and your reaction time is becoming slower. So I can see him being the next Thiago Silva in the sense that he will
Hmm.
bring a lot of experience to the back line once
Hmm.
Silva eventually retires at 45 years old or
Yeah.
whatever. um, so I can see, why we made that signing. It also, again, not very expensive,
Hmm.
only like 34 million.
Yeah.
But performances have been really, really bad recently in the
Hmm.
Premier League, and he's been dropped. Trevor Chalobah played a few games, and then once
Uh-huh.
Badiashili's come in,
Yeah.
you've seen what he brings, and
Yeah.
so after seeing that, I think you've got to put him in the D list.
Yeah, I mean, with Koulibaly, he was a player that was obviously tipped for that Premier League move for a lot of years. You've got to say, 2 or 3 years people were looking at him for a move to the Premier League. It didn't end up happening and he did move too late. I think with Koulibaly it hasn't worked out. However, you did mention him there, obviously, Thiago Silva, new contract this week. He's not in the tier list because he's not a new signing, but what do you think of that business of getting Thiago Silva a new contract? It does kind of fall within this. Surely that's an excellent piece of business that was needed to get done because he's your best defender by far at the age of 38.
Yeah, I would go so far as saying he's the best defender in the world still.
Yeah.
Like we're 10th in the league, and the only reason we're not lower than that, oh, we're ninth actually.
Oh,
Pause for
hey.
celebration.
Hey.
But the only reason we're not lower than that is because of him. The number of times he bails us out every single game, the calmness that he brings to the side, the experience, of course, but also like in terms of his ball progression, the way he leads people like Benoit Badiashile or Trevor Chalobah, and kind of his impact in the dressing room. Like you've seen when he signed the new contract, the way there was a video of Cucurella running up to him, giving him a big hug, Reece
Mhm.
James and him embracing, and you can just see how much, even though he doesn't speak like much English, you can just see like his aura is what just motivates people to just be at their level best because
Mhm.
he sets such a great example. I think when you look at all the January signings we've made, he might be one of the best. His extension,
Yeah.
because he's not showing any signs of slowing down. When you recap to his Premier League debut against West Brom at age 36, got sent off within 30 minutes, and everyone was like, "Oh, there's no way this guy's washed. He's not going to adapt to the pace and intensity of the league." And he's just proven everyone wrong and continues to do it every single year.
Yeah, it's really impressive. We'll touch on your announcement videos later on because there was one that Ben I'm sorry, but Ben Chilwell's acting is absolutely woeful. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah, that as a Leicester fan, that did make me chuckle. Carney Chukwuemeka.
I actually really like Carnes.
Hmm.
Again, brings something very different, like a different profile to our midfield, where he's got a big profile in terms of his size. He's
Hmm.
got the athleticism. He kind of reminds me of a young Ruben Loftus-Cheek in the way he can like glide past people but also push them off because of his frame. He's had limited game time due to injuries and also due to the massive squad that we have.
Yeah.
But whenever he's played, he's been very impressive. I think I'm gonna put him in the A list because he's
Okay.
one for the future and someone who I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I can imagine. What do you make to the Chelsea policy of bringing through these youngsters? Yes, you've spent a lot of money, but apart from Aubameyang, there's nobody over the age of 20. Say January, because there was obviously Sterling and Koulibaly in the summer. There wasn't anybody over the age of 25, if I'm looking at it. 24 maybe. What do you make of this new young sort of policy you've got?
Yeah, the ownership have made it a big priority to bring the average age of the squad down, just because of the way football is progressing, the high intensity of our league, and when you're playing 60 plus games a season, in the kind of style that Potter wants to play as well. I mean, Brighton did that as well by reducing their age profile when he was there. I think there's been a very active effort to do that, and to do that because another reason, like off the field as well, taking a chance on these younger players who will be on much lower wages to, Raheem Sterling, Koulibaly, who are more, they're more well known. These people, you can take a chance on them if you sign five 19-year-olds for say like 30-40 million. If one turns into a 100 million player, that investment is, pays off.
For sure.
And they're young, they're on low wages, so even if they don't work out, it'll be, I mean, I hope they all do, but selling them, moving them on is not going to be as hard as,
No.
when you have to try and move Jorginho on, or like us trying to move Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang on.
Yeah.
Those are really hard to do because no one wants a 30-year-old in their squad versus like a 21, 22-year-old. Like, I'm sure they can still develop, there's not even close to their prime yet.
Fair enough. What about Cucurella?
Yeah, he's really struggled recently, especially. Graham Potter has spoken about, he's been dealing with some off the pitch issues, little family issues and stuff, which I really sympathize with. Like, people usually, especially fans of the game, don't think about that element at all. Someone who's not an English citizen moving from a city like Brighton to, one of the biggest cities in the world, London. It's hard, and especially his wife has been pregnant since October as well. So I can imagine, it must be really stressful for him. One thing I will say though, I don't think the way Potter has managed him has been great, and he's kind of been forced to play him due to the injury of Ben Chilwell. But now I would just like to see him, benched, just like Mason Mount. Just take him out of the limelight, give him time, give Chilwell a chance. Now that he's fit again, Lewis Hall has been great since coming in as well. So I think now there is an opportunity to rest him and just give him time. I still really believe in the player that he can be and was at Brighton. He's still only 24, so I'm not going to be too harsh on him, especially knowing that he is dealing with something off the pitch. So I'm gonna put him in the. I might put him in this. Yeah, I'll put him in the C list just because. Yeah, on the pitch he has not been great, but he's not worth the D because I'm hoping he gets better.
Yeah, and you've also got a lot worse signings than Cucurella, no matter how bad he's been.
Yeah, for sure.
He hasn't been close to securing a loan move to the MLS. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Do we need to talk about it, or does he go straight into the D tier?
Can we make a new category for him?
Yeah, on it now. Add row below. Let me quickly title it Aubameyang. I'll just do Alba. There we go. Alba tier, perfect. Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not like anything he's done. The signing, I think when we spoke, I think 2-3 months ago, the signing was baffling then and is even more baffling now. Like, why would you sign someone on near deadline day when you're sacking Tuchel like the week after? It just didn't make sense.
No.
We have to loan him out to an MLS team or a team outside Europe because he's played for us and Barcelona, so he can't play for any other team. No. He's 33 years old. I have no idea why we signed him. I like the reporting around it has been that he hasn't, caused any problems in the dressing room, and I'm very happy for that because we knew the situation with Arsenal wasn't great,
Hmm.
so it's an unfortunate situation that should have never happened, and I think I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Fair enough. Aubameyang into the Alba tier. Um, Wesley Fofana, a man that I am very very familiar with.
Hmm.
I'll let you speak about it and then I'll add things because how his career's gone at Chelsea is exactly how I expected it.
Yeah, it's. I think it's going to be the same as what we spoke about a few months ago when he was, still injured.
Hmm.
Haven't seen enough of him, but he's played, I think, 180 minutes of Premier League football for Chelsea. Hasn't
Nice.
been bad in any sense, and in the Champions League scored a good goal against AC Milan as well. So I'm gonna put him in the B category just
Okay.
because I know he's 21 years old, and I
Hmm.
saw what he did at Leicester, and which was very, very impressive.
Yeah.
Alongside Thiago Silva, who also speaks French, alongside Benoit Badiashile, who is his centre back partner in
Hmm.
the French under 21 national team. I think it could be a great partnership with both of those people. So I think the future is going to be good for Wesley Fofana. Again, if caveated with if he can remain fit.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said. I just expected him to be injured. He's just come off a leg break. Did
Hmm.
What did people expect? He's broken his leg. He was out for what 9 months after a horrific challenge from Fernino. I don't get angry at players very often, but God, I had some choice words for that man, of which I won't repeat on here because I was not proud of them. But what did people? It puzzles me. He'd just been out for 9 months, and you went and spent 70 million on him. I don't know why you did it. Fafana, you should have not put on a massive shop to leave to Chelsea. And initially, I heard some news. It turned out to be false, but initially, I heard some news that he was left out of the Champions League squad, which I burst out laughing because I just felt like it would have been deserved. Sadly, he wasn't. If that's sad or not, I'll leave it up to you guys at home to decide. But Fafana, I think he will turn good, but I don't know what people expected the start to be like because this is what happens. Move on to a player I don't know as much about, Cassidy.
Yeah, Casaday's been loaned out to Reading
Hmm.
this in January. He's been really good for the development team, who, but at the time he was loaned out, were first in the PL2.
Hmm.
So they've been doing well with Omari Hutchinson and Cassidy, adding them to the squad, and
Hmm.
also some other players as well. Eddie Beach, the goalkeeper, who's also been loaned out right now. So Cassidy has been good. He hasn't made his first team debut yet, but he has trained with the first team a bunch of times, especially after the World Cup. Again, another player like Chukwuemeka, whose profile is very interesting given his size. I don't think the physicality and intensity will be a problem for him in the
No,
Premier League if he, ever makes that step. So far, not too many thoughts about his loan move to Reading. He's adapting to a new team, new system, new
of
league,
course, yeah,
new city, new country. The list goes on.
pretty much, yeah.
I think he's going to be a really good player simply for what I've seen from him at the under 21 level.
Hmm.
It's been very, very impressive. And I know a lot of people talk extremely highly of him, especially at Chelsea Youth on Twitter, who is the best Chelsea account to follow for all things Chelsea Youth related.
Hmm.
I'm going to put him in the A category as well, just
Okay,
because he has not yet made his first team debut, but has been very impressive otherwise.
okay, perfect. David Datro Fafana.
Yeah, a player I didn't really know at all
Neither.
before we signed him. I woke up one day and he was linked with Chelsea. But I think this one is a very interesting one because he was supposed to join Brighton
Yeah, it's a Potter
after
signing, isn't it?
Paul. Yeah, it was going to be Paul Winstanley, who was their head of recruitment before we brought him into Chelsea.
Hmm.
That's like a lot of other people from Brighton. But yeah, a very interesting one because they really wanted him and they definitely see something in him, to especially make that move to Chelsea. He's played twice for us, again once against Man City on his debut, where he was very impressive, and again against Fulham, where he almost got his first Premier League goal on debut, which was um, slightly unfortunate in the way that it did. Like, in the way that he missed the chance. I really
Mhm.
wanted him to score, and in the way that we ended up not getting all 3 points in that game. Um, I think I like him more because of how bad Kai Havertz has been this season, and Aubameyang. I would like him to get a little more opportunities, like especially in the last game where we clearly needed a goal against West Ham, and Kai Havertz wasn't having his best game like most of the season. I would have liked to kind of see
Mhm.
him be thrown on, just because every in the 2 games that he has played, he's looked hungry. He
Yeah,
wants to prove himself. He's from Ivory Coast, so there's obvious connections to Didier Drogba,
there
who
is.
he says he's been speaking with. So hopefully it turns out good. I'm gonna put him in the B list just because
Mhm.
I would love to see more, and I haven't seen more before his move to Chelsea because I did not, on all honesty, I didn't know who he was,
No,
so I can't rate him higher than a B. But hopefully there's potential there.
for sure. And yeah, he seems all right. I mean, I can't say I've watched loads of him. I'd never heard of him before he took the move. Um, but Brighton were interested, and Chelsea are Brighton 2.0. You'll add a seagull to the badge soon enough. So I'm not surprised he took the move at all. We'll move on from a man you didn't know about to a man you definitely did know about. You've already mentioned him, and he's been a beast so far. Benoit Badiashile.
Oh, yeah, he's been so good since coming in. He has had no adaptation period. He hasn't needed one at
No.
all. Playing alongside Thiago Silva, it's easy to look good also, but it's also easy to not look as good as Thiago Silva, but he's looked just as good as him in terms of his
Mhm.
ball progression. He offers us a different passing angle because he's left-footed. Usually where we were playing, Thiago Silva and Koulibaly together, both right-footed, and Koulibaly's passes have been kind of all over the place. But Badiashile has been very calm, very composed, and he is a beast. He's like 6'4" or
Mhm.
something. He's like easily the tallest person on the pitch whenever he plays. And we've really seen that in his aerial duel success and the way he's not let any striker so far dominate him, which has been very impressive. Still only 21 years old. Um, he's very unfortunate to miss out on the Champions League squad, but I'm still going to put him in as an A plus so far
Okay.
because we had up until West Ham we had what 3 games, 3 clean sheets
Mhm.
with him and Thiago Silva paired
Yeah.
up. So nothing, he's not put a foot wrong so far, so I can't go wrong with that.
No. And he's a player I knew a lot about when he was at Monaco. I'd watched him for a while, and he's a left-footed centre back. You know, these are hot commodities in football,
Hmm.
and he's a French centre back as well. And we know French centre backs are usually incredible, and they've got so flipping many of them. Um, I mean, French centre back options at the moment are mad. You could create 7 sides full of French centre backs, and you wouldn't even be going to that bad centre backs. It's mental. Um, what about Dennis Zakaria, the first of two loan moves on this list?
Yeah, it's crazy how his career has turned around at Chelsea since the last time we spoke, where
Yeah,
I think the last time I was like, I have no idea why we signed
he'd
him as
played
well.
one game. He just
Yeah,
played.
but it's been, I mean, he's been injured recently, but before that, especially just before the World Cup break, he was probably our best midfielder,
Mhm.
given that, we had like 3 of our midfielders out injured, but he was destroying people in the center of the pitch. Just his size, his size, the way he was just like he's not very technical, but he will just bulldoze past you, like leaving you in a pile of dust.
Mhm.
He's been, yeah, very impressive recently. I'm not sold on him in the sense that I don't think Chelsea should buy him at the end of the season. I think the price is something around 20 million euros.
Mhm.
I'm not sold on him yet, but I'm gonna wait and save this judgment for him to come back from injury and show us what he can do then.
Mhm.
But I'm gonna from I think what at the beginning of the season or last time we spoke would have been a D is probably gonna be a B right now.
B. Mhm. Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that. Another DM now, Andre Santos.
Yeah, oh my God, this guy's probably been the best January signing we've made. Um, again, I did not know who he was before
Hmm.
he signed, but since then he's been killing it for Brazil at the under 20 CONMEBOL Championship. I
Hmm.
don't know what the actual tournament is called, but I know it's a CONMEBOL tournament. He's got 5 goals in 7 games in that tournament, and he is a like central midfielder. Like he is a very interesting profile because he can do all the throw stuff, but
Hmm.
can also then go and score 5 goals for you inside the box. He's very energetic as well. I've been watching some of his games for Brazil. Again, it's at the under 20 level, so it's hard to draw too many conclusions,
Yeah.
but he looks way too good for that level, and that's definitely a positive sign. We bought him for £7 million, and his value is probably already 20 million.
Hmm.
We had to fight off a few clubs for him to get his signature as well. So I'm just very happy we signed him. I'm very excited for his future, and I can't wait for him to get the work permit.
Okay, is that
Oh,
straight to A
A
plus then?
plus,
Yeah, I
yeah.
thought so. I'd presume so.
Without having played a game for Chelsea.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that one. As I say, he has looked absolutely incredible. Which one of the many wingers do we go for next? Let's go for Mudryk,
Yeah, this one was, I think, the talk of the transfer window
for
for
sure.
a while until Enzo came back on the
Hmm.
table. I like the signing even more just because we gazumped Arsenal for it.
Hmm.
Again, there's a lot of talk about us overpaying and stuff like that, but if you read the Athletics report on how this transfer went down,
Hmm.
Arsenal were offering the exact same amount to Shakhtar. It's just their incentives for the add-ons are were they felt unrealistic. So the incentives were them winning the Champions League and the Premier League, and they were like, "Yeah, Arsenal Champions League winners."
That
I
doesn't
don't trust
happen.
them.
No.
That doesn't happen very often or ever. So Chelsea had the same ones, and their payment structure was a little more attractive to them. Again, it's not a £100 million deal; it's a £62 million deal. That if Chelsea win the Premier League, if they win the Champions League, then more money keeps going to Shakhtar.
Hmm.
Uh, Amortized over 8.5 years, it's a very good deal. Even though it's 62 million, once it's amortized, it's only 7.3 a year. So it's a good. If he does well at Chelsea, this is going to be one of the best signings that we made in terms of a bargain. He's also on low wages. He's on 97K a week, which obviously is not low, but
No.
when you make a 62 million pound signing, get him on that kind
For
of
Premier League,
is
that
getting
is
paid.
fairly low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really low. So he's only 22 years old. If he does turn into a really good player, he's on low wages, and so we're not under any pressure to give him a new deal because he's signed an 8.5 year. A lot of people are calling it a prison sentence, but however you may view it. So he's been very good against Liverpool, was pretty good against West Ham yesterday.
Hmm.
Not very good at all at against Fulham, but he Graham Potter did say that he was suffering from a cold, so we'll let that one slide.
Yeah.
Again, he hasn't played football since like November, which is when the Ukrainian league ended. So
Yes.
it's very normal to need a few
Sure.
games to ramp up your minutes and your fitness. Also, new league, new country, new city, new team,
Hmm.
etc., etc., which we can say for every
We can say
signing.
for everyone. Yeah.
I'm gonna, yeah, I think what puts him in the A category
Okay.
for me is just his mentality.
Hmm.
We've seen so many videos of him already training by himself in the gym after hours. He really, really wants to succeed and
He's
be the
strong,
best
isn't he, as
version.
well?
Yeah,
He's
he's
really
so quick
strong.
and so
Yeah.
strong. So again, I'm very impressed with his mentality more than anything so far, and mentality is something we've really lacked in the squad.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put him in the A.
I mean, yeah, I like it. 8.5 years at Chelsea. Murderers get less. But if he plays, it won't feel like a prison sentence. Knowing Chelsea, just hope you don't turn up like I only drink water in Mudrick. That's all I'll say, because otherwise you are screwed. Noni Madueku.
Yeah, he's another interesting signing. Very cheap. Again, I think he was only 32 million
Yeah,
for eight
yeah,
and a
that's
half
that's
years, which
really
is
cheap. That is
yeah, that's nothing.
for
And
Chelsea.
it's just taking yeah, true. But yeah, it's just taking another chance on another really young, promising winger. What I like is that he is English, so adapting to the squad is not going to be very difficult. I
No.
feel adapting to the league will be a little difficult. but adapting to the squad and the squad dynamics is not going to be difficult when you speak the language. What I like, one concern I do have is he is a very one-dimensional player,
Mhm.
but he's one-dimensional in the sense where he reminds me of Robin, where his prime move is him cutting in from the right and taking a shot. He scored like 3 or 4 goals for PSV like that,
Mhm.
um, and that can be a good thing if he becomes as good as Robin at it, where you know what he's gonna do, but
Yeah.
you can't stop him. But is also a little bit of a fear for me because in the Premier League, when you're up against a low block, you don't really have the space to do a move like that unless you're like really, really technically good, just like Robin was. But another thing, like yeah, he loves cutting in from the right, which leaves a pocket of space open on the right wing. And we all know that Chelsea have the best right back in the world who would love to exploit that
Not
kind of
according
space
to
and would
Fulham.
absolutely, not
Not
according
according
to
to
Fulham,
Fulham.
of course.
Of course,
Uh-huh.
that was funny.
Yeah, no, that was hilarious. I like a little bit of social media banter, but that was a little silly. Um,
Wrong.
but yeah, no, I think Reece James and him could form a really good partnership.
Mhm.
That's the hope, at least. I'm gonna put him in the. It feels harsh to put Mudryk in the A and him in the B,
Mhm.
but just because we've seen more of Mudryk at the Champions League kind of level. He's performed against the likes of Real Madrid and stuff like that. So I'm gonna put Madueke in the B list and hope that he is an A by the end of the season.
Of course, and you were speaking there about Madueke. He does really remind me of a young Riyad Mahrez.
Mhm.
Cutting in off that right hand side onto his left foot, curling them in. That's why I wanted them at Leicester. Um, let's go to a guy who has been loaned out since joining the club and was loaned straight back to his initial team, and it's Malo Gusto.
Yeah, I think this was one of my favorite signings of the window. It's no secret that Chelsea have needed a backup option for Reece James all season long. This should have been addressed in the summer, but instead we chose the leadership of Aspilicueta, um, which in it's not a great decision, but at the time I felt that it was because big period of transition, keep your captain in the team.
Mm-hmm.
But given how injury prone Reece James has kind of proved to be, having an actual backup for him that allows us to play the same kind of attacking system when uh, he comes in to replace Reece James
Mm-hmm.
is really great business. He's only 19 years old, very, very promising right back, good at a lot of things that Reece James is good at, which is the crossing, the attacking, and also his physicality. So he actually was a rugby player before he became a
Okay.
footballer. So he like the physical element of the game doesn't phase him one bit. I did watch the game between Lyon and PSG earlier this year, and
Mm-hmm.
he was up against Kylian Mbappe, Neymar. He was up against who was their left back? I forgot. Nuno
Wouldn't.
Mendes.
There we go. Yes.
Yeah, so he was up against those three, and those are all really good players, especially
For
Mbappe,
sure.
Neymar, and they he did really really well to deal with all of them. And there was this one specific move where Mbappe had got past him, but in his recovery run, he had then made a sliding tackle on him, which was very impressive because not a lot of people can make a recovery run on Mbappe and be
None.
successful at it. So there's again a lot of promise, just like a lot of other signings we made. This one actually does make a lot more sense in terms of a big need, a big area of need, in terms of how injury prone Reece James has been.
Mm-hmm.
So I would put this in the A category as
Okay.
well, and also the fact that we didn't wait until the summer to do this,
Do it
or the
now.
fact that we didn't. Yeah, we did it now, loaned them back, and the old Chelsea would have just been like, okay, we can't do this deal now. Let's go for option B, who isn't as good as option A,
No.
and then we end up with a Danny Drinkwater. We end up with a Timeo Bakayoko. We're always going for option B, C, just to get the signing in
Mate,
through the door. But here we've
I don't even know if Danny Drinkwater was on the initial shopping list, to be honest. I mean, mate, you signed. He's put the transfer request at 9 o'clock on deadline day. I, I don't. Was he on the first 30-man shortlist? The second? Was he even on the third? It would surprise me. Um, you know, we can move on from Gusto. We've mentioned the midfielder there. I've got a guy down here who is it was a little bit better than Danny Drinkwater. I mean, according, you know, there may be some people out there that may think that Danny Drinkwater is better than Enzo Fernandez. If you are, go get some help. What do you think about Enzo Fernandez?
Well, if his career is anything like Danny Drinkwater, that will be very, very
Do you want me
sad.
to put him in Alba?
But so far, he's no, no. So far, he's been an A plus. He's been Chelsea's best player in
Hmm.
both the games that he's played. You know, if we want to get into price now, we can. It's obviously a huge outlay for
Is
a player who's just 21, just turned 22. Huge, huge transfer outlay for someone who just joined Benfica like what 8, 9 months ago.
yeah.
But at the same time, when you look at how we structured the deal, 106 million pounds over 8.5 years, comes to 12.6 million a year. Versus if we would have waited until summer, we would have had more competition,
Hmm.
and also we wouldn't have been able to sign him on an 8.5 year deal because of the new UEFA regulations.
Yes.
So if you say that we signed him at like 70 or 80 million for 5 years, that would have come up to 14 million a year. So we technically we're saving money on a yearly basis on this deal. And we've signed, like, in my opinion, a midfielder who has the potential to be world class,
Hmm.
may already be world class in terms of his current form. There's not many better players, and not many better young midfielders than him in the world right now. And so far, I can't say anything wrong in any of the games. He even provided the assist in the last game, a beautiful cross into Joao Felix, and
Hmm.
that's exactly what Chelsea's midfield has missed
Yeah.
in the last few years with Jorginho, Kovacic. Like, where are the goals coming from? Where are the assists coming from? We've seen him already provide a beautiful assist. We've seen him against Fulham. He had a great shot that went like inches wide, which could have been the winner. So we're already seeing him bring elements to the and we've now finally, after 3 years of winning the Champions League, we've finally addressed the midfield issue which we've had for that long.
Yes, and then the last signing, it's another loan deal, as I've mentioned. It's João Felix. You touched on him there. Obviously, a lot of money for a loan deal, but God, he looks excellent, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was one. When we did sign him, I was a little uncertain, but in like now that I've seen him play and the hunger that he has to just prove Diego Simeone wrong, to be like, let me play in an attacking system and I'm gonna cook. And he's been cooking Premier League midfielders and defenders left, right, and center, like in the 140 minutes that he's
Hmm.
played. Um, and his hunger has and eagerness has been so much that the tackle against Fulham kind of was summed that up perfectly. Like, way too eager to impress that he lunges in and gets the red card, which was very unfortunate. But up until that point, he was by far the best player on the pitch. And yeah, no, he's been really impressive, especially his final third play, the decisiveness that he had to the offside goal that he scored against West Ham, to
Hmm.
the decisiveness to chip the goalkeeper, the coolness that he had with the volley finish, just opening his foot, has been very, very impressive. And I think if he can help Chelsea go far in the Champions League and potentially win it, which is something that he spoke about in his post-match interview, that the Champions League starts in 3 days and that's our
That's.
goal.
Hmm.
If he can do that, that's a guaranteed A plus.
Hmm.
And so far from what he's shown, despite the price, I think I'm gonna put him in A plus because he's
Okay.
completely revolutionized our attack.
A one-word answer: should Chelsea sign João Felix permanently?
No,
No.
because
Okay.
of Christopher and Kunku.
Fair enough. Right. What I will do is we'll finish off that section there before you come back to hear us speak more about Chelsea. Okay. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the PL Pod right here on Daniel Talks Football, and welcome back to another video. If you're watching this as a highlight, if you are, click the subscribe button, like the video, comment down below, go over and follow the Instagram and the TikTok Daniel Talks Football on both, and we'll get straight into this Chelsea keep, loan or sell. That's the other one. We've got 41 players, I think, are counted to go through because you will have a massive squad. So I'm not going to waste any time because this will be a monster video anyway. Gabriel Slanina.
Keep.
Okay. Is that as a backup keeper possibly?
Yeah, keep as a backup or third keeper,
Hmm.
depending on what we do with Marcus Bettinelli.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll cut to him in a second. Kepa Arrizabalaga.
Sell if you can.
Okay.
I still don't think he's good enough. Even though he has the best save percentage in the Premier League right now, just not good enough.
What's gone wrong with Kepa then? Because this is one I do want to dig into. World record keeper, and yeah, what's
Yeah, I
happened?
think that there's a lot in terms of just characteristics,
Hmm.
not the biggest in size. So that's already a disadvantage in the Premier League. We see De Gea constantly struggle with crosses as well. But what De Gea is one of the best shot stoppers in the world. And Kepa is not at that level. So especially with long shots, I mean, the Yuri Tielemans goal in the FA Cup final,
Yes.
Mendy gets to that every single time. Um, just because it was what 35,
Hmm.
30 yards out or something, and Kepa almost got there. Mendy, who's like 3, 4 inches taller than him, would probably get to
Yeah,
it. But
maybe.
even though he's been really good recently, Kepa, especially with his distribution and stuff as well,
Hmm.
I would sell him if we can recoup some of the 17 million that we paid for him, and hopefully find a new, better goalkeeper.
How much would you want? 30?
Uh, Yeah, if we can get around 30, sell him. If it's anything below that, then I'm have like keep him, give him
Oh.
another year, or sell Mendy, which we'll get to.
Hmm.
Sign another first choice goalkeeper, and then Kepa's your backup again.
All right. You've already mentioned him, Bettinelli.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a seller. His contract expires in the summer, so sell it really isn't an option. It's either renew or release,
Hmm.
and I think we can release him. Again, he's just fits the homegrown spot. He just fills the homegrown spot, which is mainly the role of the third choice goalkeeper.
Hmm.
But as we know, Chelsea have a lot of English players in their team, so we're not really short on academy talent who can
No,
fill those homegrown spots.
absolutely not. No. And then you have touched on him, Edward Mendy. What's going on here?
Yeah, he's another one who I would be happy selling, just because his contract situation is also up in the air, and off too many times at Chelsea we've seen players perform really well. We have an opportunity to sell them at a good time, and then we keep them for another few years, and then struggle to sell them. Aka Jorginho, who
Hmm.
somehow we've managed to sell.
Yes.
But there's been plenty of players like that, Zappacosta's of the world. So I would, especially when we, need to balance the books. I'm sure there are plenty of mid-table teams or other teams around Europe, maybe in the Europa League and stuff like that, who would love to have a goalkeeper like Edouard Mendy. And his story is absolutely special.
Hmm.
He was incredible in our Champions League winning campaign. I think you
Hmm.
just say thank you for that, and you're gonna be probably a legend just for what you did in that season. Your story is gonna go down in the history books of football, but it might be time to sell you.
I mean, yeah, I'll take my Leicester happily. We need a keeper, so yeah, you can come to us.
That'll be 80 million for you guys.
80 million. I thought the was we robbed you of the money. We mugged off you guys. So we'll have
It's
15
time
pence in
for
a packet of
payback.
15 pence in a packet of Walker's crisps. I think seems like the kind of deal you lot would do. Benoit Badiashile.
That's an instant keep. I don't think we need to go into that.
No, no, I think that's an obvious one. Thiago Silva again, just signed a new contract.
Keep.
Yeah,
Keep
off.
and try and clone him.
Keep and clone him just 20 years younger.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, there we go. Trevor Chalobah.
That's a little more interesting. I think with how injury prone Fofana is and how shit Koulibaly is,
Hmm.
he's a keep as well.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. I don't blame you for that one at all. Chilwell, Amanano Voa.
Uh, Keep. He's our best left back.
Fair enough. Next up we have Reece James. Keep.
Give him a lifetime contract.
Yep.
Everything.
Koulibaly.
Clone him as well.
Clone Reece
Uh,
James,
Cou-
yeah?
yes, for sure. Not Koulibaly. But Koulibaly is another interesting one. I would be happy with both the keep and the sell. I think on the previous one where we were doing the tier list, I mentioned he can be the next Thiago Silva of the team, in the sense that the experienced one among the younger centre backs who are Badiashile, Chalobah, Fofana, all who are under the age of 23. You do sometimes need that experienced head. So in that sense, I would keep him. But if he gets an opportunity in the Serie A, or if someone else comes in calling for 20-30 million, if you can recoup most of the money, I would be happy to sell him as well.
Fair enough. Club captain Cesar Azpilicueta.
Now that we've signed Malo Gusto, I think it's a sell, or I think we have an agreement with him, like a gentleman's agreement, where we would just let him go for a very small amount. So
yeah, fair enough then. Fair enough.
yeah, he's been a legend, but he's past his time.
Off to Barcelona.
Yeah, he can do that. He'd be very good for them.
Cucurella, a man that actually came from Barcelona through Getafe and Brighton.
Yeah, I think with the amount we've bought him for, we will not be able to recoup as much as we would like for it to make sense to sell him. Also think he's still a very good player, just badly out of form, dealing with a lot of issues off the field as well. But I would keep him.
Fair enough. And then Wesley Fofana.
That's a keep as well.
Yeah.
We've spent way too much to even think of selling him right now.
You have. Absolutely. Don't need to tell me. Andre Santos.
Keep and get the work permit ASAP.
Agreed. The man who had the worst acting in his announcement video ever, Enzo Fernandes.
Keep. I don't think anyone's gonna be able to take him off Chelsea. We've given him the life sentence,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have a keep and winning an Oscar for the announcement video, because as I say, it was. If you haven't seen that, please do go check it out. It was a. Yeah, wow, it was, those players, if they
You'll see
football, if they quit
you'll
football,
see why they're
future.
footballers and not actors. Yeah.
No, I disagree, if they quit football, I think they've got a future in acting waiting for them. N'Golo Kante, a man that is closing in on the end of his contract, do you give him a new one?
Another very interesting one, obviously, with his injury record. I would give him a new contract if it is a highly incentivized contract, in the sense that, you make X number of appearances, you get that much money, like a base salary of a lower base salary, because right now he's, I think, our second highest earner. So bring him well below that. Give him a base salary, but highly incentivized, in the sense that, you make 5 appearances, you get that much, and 10 appearances, that much. That kind of thing. But we all know how good he can be on his day, and he doesn't even need a lot of match fitness to reach his best. At the beginning of the season, he didn't travel with Chelsea for their preseason because he doesn't have the COVID vaccine, so he could not travel to America, which is a whole conversation in itself.
Yes.
But him and Ruben Loftus-Cheek had to stay back. But then once the league started, we're instantly in the team, and he had some really great games, and we thought, oh my God, Conte is back. We're going to win it all this season. And then he got injured and has been injured for almost 6 months now.
Yeah.
So a highly incentivized contract, or else sadly release, even though I love him to bits.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to tell me. I know with Kante, watching him, the 15-16 season, I look over to my right-hand side now as I'm recording, and I can just see him in that poster off to the right-hand side with the Premier League trophy slap bang in the middle. He was the man that won our hearts, and I remember watching him that season. He was everywhere. I remember our head of recruitment, Steve Walsh at the time, joked that our midfield had Danny Drinkwater in the middle with Kante either side. He was a player that I fell in love with very quickly after a move from France, and
yeah, he's so good that he made Drinkwater look like a 30 million player.
Mate, Drinkwater was a 30 million player. His connection with Jamie Vardy was elite, and then he went to Chelsea and forgot what he looked like. Mateo Kovacic.
Another very interesting one. So he has his contract going up next summer. So he's right now got 14 months left on his contract. He's 28 or 29. I don't think I would renew his contract, and so this would be our last opportunity to sell him. So I think he's going to be a very hard sell, even though I really love him. I think he's one of the best ball-carrying midfielders in the world. But with the Enzo Fernandez signing, with Andre Santos, Carney Chukwuemeka, and also the fact that we are still interested in a high-profile midfielder in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be time to sell Kovacic. Again, going back to the Mendy argument, we need to start selling players at a time where their price is still, a good price.
Yeah.
So I think he would be a sacrifice in that sense.
How much would you want?
So we only bought him for, I think, 45 million
Mm-hmm.
from Real Madrid. So anything above, like anything between 20 and 30 million would be acceptable, given that he has only 1 year left in his contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, at 28, I think that would probably be a fair price as well. Christian Pulisic.
That's a sell. Too injury prone and not good enough when fit.
How much would you want?
That's a harder one because his market value isn't very high. Again, 30 million maybe.
30?
I would be happy with anything just because we have so many attacking talents
Uh-huh.
that we do need like to desperately offload some people. And I think one thing about the Todd Bowley regime is that they're not afraid to sell people for cheap. Timo
No.
Werner, we sold him back to Leipzig for cheap. We weren't scared to loan Lukaku rather than sell him.
No. Yeah.
So they're not at all worried about selling players for cheap if it's the best for the squad, because right now we have a completely bloated squad. I mean, we said 41 players or something.
Yeah, it's mental.
So we're gonna have to do a lot of deals that aren't the best price in terms of value that we can get, but it's just about getting them out the door at this point.
I mean, I think at this point, you bid what other sides are bidding for Bellingham and you throw Pulisic in there. Sweeten the deal.
Yeah.
Go, here's Pulisic plus 100 million. We'll have Jude Bellingham, please. And they'll probably take the deal. So there's where Pulisic's next move is. You heard it here first on the Daniel Talks Football podcast. Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
Another interesting one. It depends on how much we spend in the summer, and if we need to use an academy sale to help balance the books a lot more. Because the thing with how FFP works is academy players sold are 100% profit, and not which is not the case where you sell someone who you've bought on a 5-year deal and sell him with 3 years remaining on his contract and stuff. So academy players like him and Conor Gallagher are extremely valuable to the accounting books.
Yeah.
I still think he is a very good player. We saw that in the West Ham game as well. He was injured for like 2 months and he came back into the midfield, and some of his driving runs are still a bit rusty, of course, but some of his driving runs, what he offers in terms of his physicality and height, is something we can definitely use as a squad player. He's also not someone who is, shouting at the manager demanding starts. So a very good, solid squad player who you can just put him in whenever needed in the cup games, whenever you have injuries, which Chelsea have way too many at all points of the year. So I would look to keep him, but if we do spend a lot of money in the summer again, then a very easy way to balance the books, and clubs like Newcastle and stuff are interested, and we're interested in January as well. So there's definitely suitors for a player like Loftus-Cheek out there.
Fair enough. Mudryk, keep.
Yep.
No other option. Mason Mount. Now, this probably will be a keep, but I know there's a lot of criticism at the moment. So, if the answer is keep, run me through the stuff going on with Mason Mount.
Yeah, it's a really toxic place out there in the Mason Mount sphere of the world. I do think the criticism is extremely fair, but the abuse is not. 2-time Chelsea Player of the Year. He's been at Chelsea since he was 8 years old. Instrumental in our Champions League win. Instrumental in getting top 4 under Frank Lampard. Instrumental in our success under Tuchel as well. Every manager who he has played under absolutely loves Mason Mount, and I think a big factor of why he's been really poor this season is because he's just burnt out. He's played over 160 games since he came back to Chelsea, which was 3 seasons ago, and he's played the most games for Chelsea in his first season. In his second season, he is almost always on the pitch for England, except towards the end of the World Cup. But we saw at the Euros, he was always on the pitch, and people were obviously questioning why, which isn't his fault. It's the manager's fault if you're playing him. But yeah, it's an easy keep, of course, for me. the performances, again, as we said with Cucurella, he needs time away from the pitch just to, regain his confidence, work hard in training, get, completely healthy again, because, he's the kind of player that will 100% play with knocks and stuff for the team just because the team needs him. So just give him some time away from the limelight, some time to, regain his confidence. And we hope that by the end of the season, we see the Mason Mount that we all know, banging in goals and assists for Chelsea. Again, he's the first player since Eden Hazard to have 10 plus goals and assists in the Premier League, which was last season. And those are stats that you can't deny. When you are a team that struggles to score goals and he is your main creator and main goal threat in a season, like, I don't get a lot of the abuse. Like, he's been really poor this season, but he's been so good previous to that. He's the one that deserves some slack.
Yeah.
Like, there's other people in the squad who get slated for performances just as bad in Mason Mount, and that is justified because that's, they're consistently shit. Versus Mason Mount has been one of the most consistent performers apart from this season, where, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. He has been really shit, and his decision making has been really, really poor at times. But we've seen what he can do, so it's a pretty easy keep for me.
Fair enough. Dennis Zakaria, obviously this isn't really a keep, loan or sell. Is this a buy or send back?
I would, if they're planning on selling a Conor Gallagher or Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I would keep, because again, Zakaria is that kind of, really good squad player who you can has a lot of good attributes for the Premier League especially. So if you're selling someone like Ruben Loftus-Cheek or Gallagher, then buy. But other than that, I think we can do a lot. I think we should focus on buying world-class midfielders rather than squad players when we already have the squad players.
So send back then.
So yeah, send back unless we sell the squad players and need squad players.
Fair enough. Hakim Ziyech.
Easy sell. Almost happened as well, but
yeah, it did. It almost went to PSG
story.
before. That's one we'll leave for another day, because I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories around that one. Conor Gallagher.
I would keep him and resist the urge of banking straight 40 million profits on him, just because, he's the kind of player who will go to a Newcastle, tear it up there, and all Chelsea fans will be like, why did we sell Conor Gallagher? He's going to be another, not that I'm saying he's the caliber of like De Bruyne, Salah and stuff, but he is one that could hurt the future. And he's already at our club. In some games he's been really, really phenomenal. In other games you've really seen the deficiencies in his game. Still only 22 years old. There's a player there, and I would hate to see him go and thrive elsewhere.
Kai Havertz.
This is a controversial one. I think with how consistently poor he's been this season and the season before as well, I would sell.
Okay.
But I can't see too many great strikers who we would be interested in. I mean, if we can get an Osimhen in, that would be great, but we'd have to overpay. And again, I have PTSD from the last time we signed the top scorer of the Serie A.
Vlahovic could be available.
Yeah, I don't think he's too much of an upgrade on Kai Havertz as well. I think he's not been too great for Juventus as well. I don't think he's... Yeah, so... I think I would like, Ivan Toney has been really good. I think he could be really good and bring, I think in the last episode we spoke about how Chelsea, like some of the wingers Chelsea have signed might thrive with a more physical number 9. And Toney, his link-up play is really good. He can do the physical element, and also technically he's very good as well. So it depends on if we're in the market for a striker or not, because I don't think Chelsea can spend another 300 or 600 million next year. We're gonna have to be a lot more smarter in areas that we prioritize, and I think midfield is going to be a big priority. I don't know if we can then buy another world-class striker after that, but like if it were up to me, I would look to sell Kai Havertz while we still can.
Okay, Carney Chukwuemeka.
Keep,
not loan.
No, just because I think now that the midfield is going to be, if we're selling Kovacic, we've already sold Jorginho. With the midfield getting a little lighter in terms of the experienced players, we're going to need like someone like him, especially like, yeah, if we sell Loftus-Cheek as well. I think there's going to be a heavy turnaround in our midfield. I think when we were counting up the players, you even made a comment of, "Holy shit, you guys have so many midfielders."
Yep.
I think a lot of them are going to be leaving this summer, and
Hmm.
so I think he's going to get a lot more game time. And even towards the end of the season, now that he's fit again, I think he will be getting a lot more game time.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Harvey Vale, I presume this will be a loan.
Mhm. Yeah, this will be a loan. Unfortunately, his loan to Hull City did not go very well, and he's back with our under 21s, where he actually has 3 assists in 3 games.
Mad.
So showing that he is way too good for the under 21 level is just finding the right loan move for him, which we did not do this time. So hopefully we get it right this second time.
Hmm. Amari Hutchinson.
Unfortunately, his loan move to, I think it was
Yes.
Huddersfield, yeah, broke down.
It
They got
was.
Albrighton instead, right?
It was. Was it? It was somebody in the Midlands. I can find out for you now.
Birmingham
It,
City.
it was somebody in the Midlands. Who was it in the? It was West Brom.
West Brom. Oh yeah, West Brom.
Um,
Yeah, unfortunately that didn't pan out. They got Mark Albrighton
it did.
instead. So yeah, it's he's again way too good to be in the PL2 right now. Just not good enough for the Chelsea first team.
No.
I'm really happy he got his debut, although it was against Man City, and making your debut against one of the best teams in the world is hard enough, especially when you're playing for Chelsea, who were absolutely awful in both those games.
Hmm.
So he hasn't shown enough to, warrant a spot in the first team, especially after all the new signings we made. So I think it's a pretty obvious loan.
Hmm. Fair enough. Lewis Hall.
Um, Another very interesting one I would keep just because Ben Chilwell is injury prone and Lewis Hall is also a midfielder. Like that's his preferred position, so he can act as left back depth or midfield depth as well. And has shown that he's easily ready for this level. Like he's been really, really promising when he has played for us. So I would keep him just for the experience of being around in first team training and also the backup of, if Chilwell or Cucurella get injured, you have a solid backup option, and
Hmm.
you're not losing out there.
No, fair enough. On to the attackers now. Before we then move on to the players that you currently have loaned out. Aubameyang.
Um, that's sell, release, whatever you can do to get him
Yeah,
off the books.
just get him gone. Felix.
Hmm.
Obviously, this isn't a keep sell loan, or is this a buy or is this a get let back? If it's a buy, what would be the max you would buy him for?
Yeah, I think this one's really interesting because he has been one of our best players in the 2 games that he has played. And so if he continues, it's hard to choose right now whether I would keep him or let him go back to Atletico, not without knowing how he does for the rest of the season. If he keeps it up, I think you have to just give Atletico Madrid a blank check and, ask them to name their price because this guy is a world-class talent on his day
Hmm.
and still very young, fits the age profile of the squad. But at the same time, without knowing how he's going to be for the rest of the season and knowing that we do have Christopher and Nkunku coming from Leipzig,
Hmm.
who both players love operating in areas. So I think it might have to be a give back to Atletico because we know we have Nkunku coming.
Okay,
But again, if he blows it out of the park and helps Chelsea win the Champions League, then we have to keep him.
we have to keep him, and then you obviously have sort of said a blank checkbook. There there probably would have to be a top limit of that, 120 million maybe. What would be your absolute max send? 100 million,
Given
even if
that
he was incredible.
Atletico signed him for what 120-ish million,
Exactly.
and he's been there for like 2 or 3 years already. So
Hmm.
I would hope it's not anywhere around that amount, especially now that we can amortize it over 8.5 years.
Of course.
So if it's, I think the upper limit I would go to, given that Nkuku's also coming for 60 million, is maybe 80 million.
Okay,
I wouldn't go anywhere near the 100 million mark
that's
because
fair enough.
I don't see. the value. I mean, obviously the value in the player, but in terms of him being at Atletico for 2 seasons or 3 seasons already,
No,
and them signing him for 120, I don't see that being a good deal for us.
fair enough. Raheem Sterling?
I think you keep him as the experienced head of our attack. We all know there's a great player there. We saw it under Tuchel. We saw it for England as well. He does pretty well. And Southgate relies on him because of his experience. Like, we have Mudryk, who's 22. We have Madueke, who's 20. Nkunku, who is also young, I think 24.
Hmm.
And will need to adapt to the league. Broja, who's young. A lot of young players. And so he kind of will be the experienced head that people will kind of look up to. So I
Hmm.
would keep him.
Okay, and you've literally just touched on him there, Armando Broja.
Yeah, he's a keep as well. Was doing really well. Really fighting Kai Havertz for that spot. When I was talking about selling Kai Havertz, I completely forgot about Broja as well.
Hmm.
Which would have been really interesting if he was still fit. I think he would have 100% taken Kai Havertz's starting spot, and I'm hopeful that his recovery with his ACL is going well and continues to go well, and he can be fit and ready for the start of next season because he was really looking dangerous.
Hmm. And then we've got two current Chelsea players left, David Datro Fofana.
The plan was to loan him in January before Broja signed, and we realized, shit, we have Kai Havertz, who is not great, and
Hmm.
we need someone who can compete with him. So I think he's definitely going to be loaned out in
Alone,
the
right.
summer
And
if
then,
Fofana is fit.
yeah,
Not Fofana, Broja.
if Broja's fit, yeah.
Yeah.
Madueke.
I would keep him as well, especially for selling Hakim Ziyech.
Hmm.
He is, again, going to be the only right winger we technically would have in the squad, like natural right winger.
Hmm.
So I think he could be a pretty good option.
Okay.
Not necessarily like someone who I would start every single game,
Hmm.
but someone who has the ability to change the game and has the ability to offer again different crossing angles with his left foot from the right hand side.
Are you 100% sure you don't want to loan him to Leicester? Just want to
Uh,
check.
that actually might be a good loan.
I
If
think
we
it would be a
do
very good
loan him
loan.
out, yeah, it would be definitely a good loan. If we sign Felix and Nkunku, then I could see it maybe.
Great.
I
That's,
wouldn't I wouldn't mind that.
I'm
Develop
getting
him.
I'm getting my hopes up now for the next few months before it doesn't end up happening. And now we'll move to the players that you do currently have out on loan. We'll start off with a man that knows all about the curse of the number 9 shirt. It's Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah, I actually had forgotten about him before you had told me
100 million
about the
and you
list.
forgot. That's
Yeah,
mad.
so easy. I don't think we're going to be able to sell him, so I think he's going to be another loan back to Inter. I think there was talk about that happening
Did,
last summer, but he's hasn't really been playing too much. I mean, he's
no.
got back into the team now because he's back from injury, but he hasn't, lit the world on fire. Or I'm scared actually that Inter might not want to loan him
That's what I'm
again.
saying. Do
Yeah,
Inter
which
even
would be
want him?
scary. I hope so, man. I hope so. We'll pay you to just keep him there.
The fact you're paying a club, that would be mad.
Yeah.
Gusto. That's a keep?
Yeah, that's an easy keep because we had to loan him back this
Yeah.
year to get the deal done.
Hmm. Fair enough. Hudson Odoi.
He would be a sell for me. Hasn't
Okay.
really impressed.
Hmm.
For Leverkusen to the extent that we would have hoped of. When we thought of, oh, he's gonna tear it up in the Bundesliga, but he really hasn't. He's had really good games, of course,
Hmm.
but not good enough to warrant a spot back at Chelsea. And again, academy player, we would get 100% of the profits of the sale.
Hmm.
Still young, so we could fetch I think 30 odd million for him. Yeah, no, he's one I would look to sell.
He's a player, I think, when Bayern were really interested a couple of summers back and were
Hmm.
offering some big money. Looking back on it now, you
Yeah.
really should have taken them up on that because he just hasn't turned into what everyone thought he would.
Yeah, it's easy to do that in
It is,
hindsight,
of
but we
course.
didn't think he would get a near career-ending injury because at that moment he was tearing it up and scoring goals in the Europa League, and that one injury literally ruined his career,
It
which
did.
is really really sad to see for someone who was 18 at the time.
Hmm. Next up, we have Ampadu.
Yeah, this is another person who I think still hasn't figured out what his best position is,
No.
um, but he has been pretty impressive on his loan at Serie A. and I think he's a player who does suit the Italian league as well, because both his loan went to Venezia, and his current loan is also going really well. So while his performances have been good, and he is a very versatile player who is pretty useful in a lot of situations,
Hmm.
I think I just don't think he's good enough for Chelsea, or has proven that he can be good enough to be anything more than a squad player,
Okay.
and we already have a few of those. Again, another academy player who, if we sell, we can bank all the profits. So yeah, I would look to sell him as well,
Okay, fair enough.
and the
Malang
loan
Sarr.
cycle for him,
And the loan
basically.
cycle finally, yes.
Yeah.
Another player that's on the loan cycle, Malang Sarr.
I would sell him. So we, it's really funny. We loaned Malang Sarr out to AS Monaco. He has a
Hmm.
clause in his contract. I don't know what the clause is in terms of if he plays X number of games, they have to sign him. But I don't know what that number of games is.
Okay.
But we surely haven't done ourselves too much harm, given that we just bought their other starting center back in
No.
Badia Shield. So now they might have to play Malang Sarr a lot more. So that situation is pretty funny to me. But we didn't buy him, we got him for
You got him for
free.
free, didn't you? Yeah.
Even though he's not an academy player, again, we have no transfer outlay on him, so selling him would be a good profit.
And then last but not least, Bakayoko.
The legend, I don't know, I have no idea how he's still at the club, but his contract expires in the summer, and I am counting down the days for that.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. That sums it up. We'll round off that segment there before we come back to part 3 to figure out how to fix Chelsea. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the PL Pod right here on Danny Talks Football. And if you're watching this as a video, hello, click the subscribe button, like the video, comment down below, do all of the good stuff, and we'll get straight into how to fix Chelsea and start off with the manager's situation. Now, there's been a lot to talk about Graham Potter because since spending all the money in January, he hasn't been particularly excellent, as Chelsea haven't been as a whole, really. Are you Potter in, are you Potter out, and why?
Yeah, this is a question that's even more divisive than the Mason Mount situation at Chelsea right now,
Hmm.
which really says a lot. But I did begin with I am Potter in, um, but I'm also very aware that his time at Chelsea has not been great
Hmm.
in any sense, and he himself has not. He has a lot of situations. I think he has the lowest win percentage of any Chelsea manager in the last like 30 years,
Hmm.
which never makes for good reading.
It doesn't.
But then when you also need to caveat that with the context of the injury crisis we've had since he's come in, and it's the worst injury crisis we've seen in the Premier League. Like last season we had 92 injuries. This season we've had like lesser number of injuries, but when you look at the length of the injuries, like
It's been
Fafana
bad.
has been out since October. Reece James, who's just come back, has been out from October. Both of them came back after the World Cup. Both of them got re-injured. Like you literally couldn't write this. Chilwell was out for 3 months. Conte, one of like I still think he is the best midfielder in the world when he is fit.
Hmm.
The problem is he's been out since August.
Hmm.
And so when you look at all those injuries, and then the injuries in attack we had, which kind of forced our hand on buying a lot of attackers in the
Hmm.
winter window. So we had Sterling out, we had Pulisic out. So for Armando Broja ACL injury, Edouard Mendy has struggled with injuries. So just all over the place, we've had so many injuries that any manager would struggle with
Hmm.
this. We saw Thomas Tuchel struggling at Chelsea at the beginning of the season with a fully fit squad. So of course you have to cut some slack for Graham Potter, who has had to go through one of the worst injury crises in our club's history.
Hmm.
Um, and so when you caveat it with that and look at the performances pre-injury, where we beat AC Milan 7-0 on aggregate, where we, were when Potter came in, we were third in our Champions League group. Sorry, we were fourth in our Champions League group on goal difference, having drawn the first game, and now then we entered the group first after beating AC Milan twice. So when you look at all of those things that were going on pre-injury and how we were playing so well, um, there were signs of promise, and then all of that, you know, I remember there was a span of
Hmm.
3 games where we lost Wesley Fofana in one, Ben Chilwell in the other, and then Reece James in the other in a
Mhm.
span of like 1.5 weeks,
Mad.
and you could just see all the kind of building blocks that Potter had spent, building, all just crumbling down. And then we had like some really really bad form again in November, which we saw last season as well when Chilwell and Reece James went out under Thomas Tuchel, where
Mm.
we were first in the league, and then by the time they came back, we were like fighting for the top four.
Yeah.
So it's a problem that we've seen last season as well. It's a problem that existed pre as well. But again, Potter hasn't helped himself in the way he's
No.
sometimes set up the team, in the way he's kind of spoken in some press conferences. And I'm not talking about, not being fiery like Tuchel. And a lot of people will talk about how uh, they don't see the ambition from Graham Potter, or the fieriness that fans want to see in a manager,
Mhm.
because fans want a manager who reflects their what they feel after a game and after a loss and a poor result. And some of the boys did everything hasn't been very impressive.
No.
So that's some spots where he hasn't helped himself. And then again in January, we spent 300 million, bought in 8 or 9 players in, and people expect instant results when you're trying to
Yeah.
bed in all these new signings, and not just all these new signings into a new culture, a new league, and stuff like that. But then you're also trying to bed in the players that are returning from injury, trying to just manage minutes of all these different people. You have an extremely bloated squad. I can't imagine that it's easy. But why I am Potter in is because in previous situations at Chelsea, when the results have been just as bad as right now, under great managers like Mourinho, Tuchel, etc., etc., you've seen in player interviews the body language that they are showing is completely off, where you get the feeling that they themselves don't believe that they can turn this around.
Mhm.
But when you look at the player interviews right now, even after, especially after the West Ham game, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Joao Felix, all of them have come out to say that there is something like we're only just like like gelling together as a team.
Mhm.
And you saw that in moments in the West Ham game where we were playing them off the park for a good like 20, 30 minutes in short spells, where you saw the attack clicking, all these new players who are still adapting to the system and adapting to themselves are finding themselves on the pitch, like the pass that Mudryk played to Havertz, like that kind of connection is just forming. And
Mhm.
so we saw that in spells against West Ham, where we saw how good we can be. It's just about like now, but we all like this is what Potter said as well. We saw how good we can be, but we also saw the areas that we still need to improve on, which is the consistency of doing that rather in 20 to 30 minute spells over the course of 90 minutes. And that will only come with time on the training pitch, which I'm glad we have plenty of now that we're out of the Carabao Cup, out of the
Yes.
FA Cup, and we don't really need to. We're not under pressure of winning in the league, because top four is pretty much out of reach. And if we don't get top four, I really don't care about whether we get the Europa League or the Conference League or no European football. It doesn't
Mhm.
really matter to me. So like yeah, with more time to bet in the new signings, to bet in the re-injured players,
Mhm.
I think we will go back to seeing performances of the caliber that we saw against AC Milan,
Mhm.
which will then excite the fans again. Because if you would have asked fans at that point of the season, are you Potter in, Potter out? All of them would have been Potter in at that point.
Mhm. Fair enough. And then we'll move to transfers, because this is probably a big part of how to fix Chelsea. We've seen you're making a lot of transfers. We've seen you're happy to be brave in the transfer window. So, what positions do you further need to strengthen? Do you have any names for me? What do you need to do in the summer?
Just before going to names, what I would really, really love to do is give flowers to Todd Bowley and the ownership for two things. One, for getting the recruitment team in,
Mhm.
and which is why you see the contrast in the signings we made in
Mhm.
the summer to the signings we made in January in terms of the player profiles, the age profiles
Mhm.
especially. Like these guys really know what they're doing. To get someone like Andre Santos, to get someone like Benoit
Sure.
Badiashile, like they've made some really shrewd signings. Yes, we've overpaid in some, but then again, the loophole of the contracts, it's coming to an end in the summer. So if
Hmm.
there was ever a time to do it, is right now. So that is one thing I want to give them flowers for, is getting us a recruitment team, which we've really really lacked since
Hmm.
about 2017 when Michael Emenalo left, which is incidentally the last time we won the league. Coincidence? I might not be
Okay.
sure.
All right.
Um, but yeah, so the recruitment team, of course, and then the kind of signings they've made, in terms of addressing current issues in the squad with
Hmm.
players like Enzo Fernandez, Mikhailo Mudryk, Malo Gusto. So we knew that Chelsea's attack was weak, Chelsea's
Hmm.
midfield was non-existent, and we desperately need backup for Reece James. But then also caveating that with signings for the future like Andre Santos, Madueke, Datro Fofana,
Hmm.
players who will, like, so we usually, and I told you this before the episode as well, like January transfer window is only for short-term fixes. People
Yeah.
do the business in the summer, and then some things go wrong, and they're like, okay, what do we need to do to get to the end of the season?
Hmm.
But this is the first time I've ever seen a club use the January window to not only address the current issues but plan for the future. Like, I've never seen squad planning done in a January transfer window,
Hmm.
which is extremely unique, and it takes a lot of confidence to do that, and a lot of balls. And they've shown that they've got not just the big checks but the big balls as well to cash those checks.
Hmm.
So that's something I really want to give them praise for, because we've seen a lot of, Todd Bowley's clueless. He doesn't know what he's doing, but man, he's really building something special at Chelsea. And
Uh-huh.
if if this works out, of course, otherwise he's going to look like an idiot,
Hmm.
giving people life sentences for contracts and stuff like that. But that's something for a future episode. In terms of signings that I think Chelsea should make for the summer, I think midfield is still going to be an issue, given that we neglected signing a midfielder since 2018,
Hmm.
which is Kovacic's last midfielder we signed on a permanent deal. So I think we still need more midfielders, especially if Kovacic leaves in the summer. We sell Loftus-Cheek or Gallagher or whoever else. Um, I think we need, like, we already have the squad players, so we do need to go big on a midfielder. Declan Rice would be the dream. I've wanted him at Chelsea for a while.
Hmm.
I also think he would complement Enzo Fernandez really, really well. In terms of their characteristics, and Premier League proven, extremely consistent, doesn't get injured. Although if he joins Chelsea, I would not be surprised if he breaks a leg or two,
Hmm.
because that's just how our luck goes. But
Yes.
he would be the dream for me. But even if it's not Declan Rice, just someone in the midfield who can come in right now and just slot into the position beside Enzo Fernandez. And then in attack, we already have Nkunku coming in. So I don't think we need any other signings unless we sell Kai Havertz, and then we need another really good center forward.
Hmm.
Um, we spoke about Victor Osimhen. I would love him. Ivan Toney. I would love him. But there aren't too many, world class strikers on the market right now, who you can, who are unhappy at their clubs. There's obviously Erling Haaland and all those world class strikers, but they're not going to come to Chelsea.
Wow.
So that's a little difficult to do.
Hmm.
So that's not my primary focus, but midfield would definitely be my primary focus.
Hmm.
And we already have Nkunku, and so what I would also like to see is, instead of spending 120 million on players every single time and spreading it out over however many years,
Hmm.
now that we have this recruitment team in place, and I think we're going to see this as well, we're going to see a lot more of the signings before the signing. So like Enzo Fernandez type people who we buy from, like, before they move to
Andre
Benfica.
Santos
So
kind of
yeah, the
stuff. Yeah.
Andre Santos, where we pick them up for cheap at young ages.
Hmm.
And again, if we pick up five Andre Santoses one Andre Santos costs 11 million. If we pick up five of them, that'll be like what, 60 million for five young promising players. We only need one of them to turn into like 100 million player for that investment to come good, you
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
And so that I want to see a lot more of that kind of strategy in the summer, where we're planning for the future. And I think we will see a lot more of that, especially because Todd Bowley is very keen on purchasing another club and starting up like a multi-club model like Man
Yes.
City have. And so we can send all these people to the feeder clubs, and not have to worry about, you know, their game time, because, you know, we'll be owning both clubs. So, you know, those players will get game time in preferred positions and stuff like that. Like the loan will actually develop them rather than, you know, a Harvey Vale at Hull City where, you know,
Yeah.
he barely got any game time and stuff like that. So those are the summers that I would kind of like to see.
Okay.
Those are the signings I would like to see in the summer, sorry.
Fair enough. And then we have already touched on players that do need to leave. You can see that on the keep, sell or loan, which might already be on the channel. If not, it'll be in the podcast and it'll be coming on the channel. But run me back through them again. Who needs to leave? And what we will add to this is, when could these players leave? Because obviously there will be a lot of players. You know, you've currently got 41 key first team players either on the books or out on loan. If obviously not all, you know, you would need to let go of possibly, you know, 10, 15 players here. Not all of them could go this summer. So when can players who do need to leave, when can they feasibly move on?
I actually think we could do a big clear out in the
Okay.
summer. Something we spoke about in the, I think, the Keep Sell Loan episode, is that, you know, Todd Bowley and Clear Lake Capital are, because they inherited the club with no debt and a lot of signings were made prior to their regime. They're not afraid of cutting their losses on these signings, which we saw with Timo Werner, which we're seeing with the Lukaku deal, where we bought him for 100 million and then loaned him back instantly, and we're still covering a part of his wages as well. So, and even in the Hakim Ziyech deal, like we were gonna still be paying a lot of his wages,
Yeah.
which obviously fell through to PSG. So we're not afraid of, you know, cutting our losses on signings that they didn't make. So I'm not sure to what extent we'll see a big clear up, but I know a lot of the players that are currently in the squad will no longer be there. And yeah, no, I'm looking forward to a lot of them no longer being there, and especially the older ones, just so the age profile is much lower of the squad, and you know the intensity and distance covered, kind of those kind of stats are much higher than they currently are. Because currently, a lot of times this season, I've seen a Chelsea team with no desire to even do the small things of like closing people down and stuff like that. But with young, hungry players, I think that's what, like that's the you'll get the basics from them at least. So yeah, just my kind of advice would be sell as many players as you can who you know are not going to be in your plans,
Okay.
or loan the rest out.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And we'll probably leave how to fix Chelsea there, actually. If you do want to hear the specifics of where these players will go back and listen to the keep, sell or loan. Before we do round off the podcast, though, I did want to discuss how Chelsea are kind of able to buy so many players. So I will actually put the question to you. How can Chelsea buy so many players?
Yeah, this has been the talk of the transfer window, hasn't it? Like every other day, Chelsea were making a new signing, and rival fans are like, "Oh, how's FFP not getting them? How are they cheating?" You know, but in reality, we haven't really cheated. We just have an owner who is extremely clever and found a very clever loophole in the financial fair play system. So the way the football accounting works is, if I buy a player for 100 million on a 5-year contract, on the books it counts, it goes over the length of the player's contract. So 100 million over 5 years would be 20 million every season, is what the player would cost in terms of their book value. And so if you just make that 100 million for over 6 years, then that makes it even less. 7 years, even less. And we've seen players getting 8.5 years. So I actually made a big post on it on my
You
Instagram,
did.
which you could check out as well. It's one of my pinned posts, because I hate the misconception that people have that, you know, Chelsea are cheating and whatnot. So we've signed obviously a lot of players. You can just list them off: Datro Fofana, Andre Santos, and Nkunku, which hasn't been made official yet, but Fabrizio has given the here we go, and stuff like that. Badiashile, Mudryk, Felix, Gusto, Madueke, and the big one, Enzo Fernandez. So we spent a total of 341 million in the January transfer window alone, which is again more than Europe's top five leagues combined. But when you look at the book value of all these deals amortized over the length of the players' contracts, we've only spent 52.6 million this year on the January transfer signings, which is not. I mean, I say only as if that's that's more than the budgets of most clubs per transfer window. But like this is something that on face value the 341 sounds absolutely insane, but the 52 million actually doesn't. And so the way that player sales work in FFP terms is if I sell a player for example, Jorginho was sold for 12 million, that whole 12 million is put in that year's accounts. So instead of doing the sale over the length of the player's contract, you're booking the whole transfer value in that year. So when you do 52 million that we spent minus the 12 million that we sold Jorginho for, we only spent 40 million, like in terms of accounting, in terms of how it's going to be showing in our accounts, which is why we're not going to be caught by FFP, or we're not cheating FFP, because 40 million spent is really not much for a club the size of Chelsea. And when you also caveat that with, Conor Gallagher had rumors of leaving to Newcastle for 45 million. If we sold Conor Gallagher for 45 million in January, we would have a 5 million net profit for the transfer window, having spent 300 million. So that's pretty crazy, and that's why UEFA are kind of cracking down on this and have said that from the summer you can't give a contract length longer than 5 years, which is good, but also pretty stupid because Chelsea have already done it. We've, as I said, we've not just bought signings for now, but we've bought signings for the future. And so all this new rule is doing is preventing other clubs from doing it as well, while we're just sitting there smoking a cigar, having cheated the system, technically. So yeah, no, that kind of answers how Chelsea were able to spend so much money, which when you look at the accounting values of these transfers, really isn't that much money.
No. Okay, fair enough, mate. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, as always. For the lovely people at home, if people want to find out more about Chelsea and want to find some of the posts you have mentioned, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so I go by at Chelsea FC blogs on Instagram, and I think I have a link tree there, so you can find me on TikTok and stuff as well. But at Chelsea FC blogs on Instagram, at CFC Daily on TikTok. Those are my main channels.
Perfect.
So yeah, give me a follow if you ever want to talk more about FFP and football finances. You can always give me a DM as well.
Yes.
I've had to explain that to so many people. It's pretty fun, though.
You just need like an automated message at this point. Just like, if you want to
no,
find
yeah.
out about FFP, here it is. If not, message me again and I'll get back to you. But no, yeah, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you for coming on to the pod. You're welcome anytime. And to the listeners at home, thank you for listening to the podcast. I think it's the longest podcast we've ever done, so I hope you did enjoy it. And I'll catch you all again in the next one. See ya.